Yo, I'm going to teach you guys how to make these dreadlocks in Blender. Pretty simple to make. It's just with a particle system and dynamic hair. In the beginning video, I did use the Human Gen add-on, but for this video, I'm just going to show you guys on the default Suzanne head. So I'm going to start with a Suzanne. First off, before anything else, I'm just going to downscale it, just because of the settings that I have already from this. It just works better at this scale, so I'm just going to press S and go 0.4. Just go 0.4 down, and just Control A and then press scale to apply the scale. And I'm just going to subdivide it by 2 and convert to mesh to apply that. And if you're doing this on a skull or Suzanne or whatever, you're just going to want to select out where you think the scalp would be. Okay, so something like that. Now I'm just going to do Shift D and then P, and now it's its own separate layer. So we're just going to add a particle system onto that. Go hair. So the number is what we're going to use to control the amount. It's not really 1-to-1. I'm not really sure what it is. Put in 50. There should be around 20 to 30. And I'm just going to change the hair length to 0.8 for this scale. All of these settings will be for this scale. So if you have something a different scale, they might not work as well. So if you want it to work the exact same, if you have any mesh, downscale the stock Suzanne and then scale your mesh to the same. Next setting is the viewport display and render display. I'm just going to turn both these strand steps up to 7. This is just going to give it a bit more subdivisions in each strand so it can get more curves in it. And the segments here I'm going to change to 12. Next, for the children, I'm going to go interpolated. So for a good render amount is 200, and display amount in the actual viewport, you can do whatever your system's comfortable with. For me, I can go around 150 before it starts lagging badly. None of these settings you really need to do anything. Parting, you're going to want to go all the way up. That's what's going to separate all the hairs into separate locks. So you can see now with this number, the more we increase, the more it will be there. Next, for the clumping, you're going to want to use a clump curve and drag this right point all the way down and make a new point in the middle and just drag it up to the top right. You just want them to be kind of round on the edges. And for the roughness, we're going to change the size to 0.01, and the uniform is what's going to give them that noise effect. So something around 0.07. So you can see they're starting to take their shape, and the more parents you add, so if we go to 200, the thicker they get. So if you go down to 50, you'll see when I go into the rendered, but they become thinner. So the more realistic, you would have to add more. We're going to use a curl kink. I'm going to change the amplitude down to 0.001. Frequency will turn to 3.75. The shape we're going to drag all the way to the left. And the flatness is what's going to give it that tight to the scalp look. So I'm just going to go with 0.6. So next, you would want to turn on the hair dynamics. And if we bring out our timeline, and press play, you see they drop, but they drop right through. So you're going to want to add a collision onto your mesh. You should be able to use just the default settings. And press play again. And they react. And for the hair shape, we're going to go 0.02 for the tip and the root. You want to keep these around the same size. You can change them a bit for the tip, but don't go too much because it'll look like they're starting to just thin out near the ends. And then the diameter scale, we're going to go 0.01. Now we just have a simple lighting setup with a background going. So for the material, I'm just going to go into the material tab, delete the default, and type in hair. And we can just plug that straight in. We can just change the color of this. And you do get some off strands. I think this is from the parenting. If you want to make these colored at all, a way to make a two-tone would just be with a gradient and a color ramp. And you can change these to whatever tones you want. Here's an example with some shorter hair. And to add a bit more realism, you could add a ambient occlusion with the color ramp. And if you click inside here, it'll make the hairs look more dense. It does take a bit more computing power though. So I'm going to turn down the display mount, and you can make this whatever color you want. You can just add a hue and saturation value in between those, and you can change all the colors. If you want to even mix these, you can by just doing a little bit more in the shader editor. You can do a mix, and you can toss a gradient over top of that. Maybe change the rotation 90 degrees. And then you can make these black or something. And you get some really cool colorations out of this. Just keep in mind when you do use the ambient occlusion, it does raise the render time. And if you find any problems, the main settings that I found that change things are the vertex mask just changes the weight of each dread and how much it'll fall down. And the stiffness is how stiff each dread will be, and the dampening is just how much they'll move. So if you have in your scene your dreads are bouncing all over the place, just increase the dampening, increase the stiffness a bit, and the mask just increase a bit. Just play around with these settings really. That's pretty much the tutorial on how to make these dreads. If you guys have any questions again, just put them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. And I'll see you later.